Hello, young friends. You must be very much excited in this new class. Welcome to class 11th. I know your excitement. You have completed secondary classes, that is high school, and come up to the senior secondary classes. Let me welcome you to class 11th, to the English course. Do you know how many courses are offered by CBSE in class 11th? Friends, there are two courses. One is English elective 001 and another one is English core 301. 301 is the code. 001 is the code for English elective. But here we have taken up English core course for class 11th. What is English core and what is English elective? Actually, English elective is literary course, whereas English core is a language course. Here we have to focus on the language, not on literature. We have to learn language. Okay? So this is a language course, English core that you are going to read. What is language now? Let us first know what the language is. It's very difficult to say, isn't it? You have been studying it for past 10 years, but still it is difficult to say what is language. Okay, let me make the question easier. Why do we use language? Whatever the language be, but let us think, why do we use language? Yes, think of. Certainly, language is used for communication. This is called to be the medium of communication. Yes, the golden saying, language is for communication and communication for language. What is the meaning? Language is for communication, that's all right. But communication for language? I mean to say that communication, when we make communication, that develops our language. As when we use language, that communicates, that gives communication, that makes communication. That way, same way, communication, the more we have the communication, the more we would develop our language. Communication should be for developing our language. Okay, now coming to the next slide, that is what is communication. Now we have to know what communication is. Here you see that in the slide, that the act of sharing or exchanging the feelings, ideas and information is communication. Right? So the act of sharing, you share, you exchange. Exchange means give and take. What do you give and take? The feelings, ideas and information with others. That is called communication. Okay, that's all right. Communication is clear. Now, we have to know how many types of communication are there. Let us think of the types of communication. Among the types of communication, mainly there are two: verbal communication and non-verbal communication. Verbal communication is one where we use words, language. Okay? So verbal communication has two forms. Again, oral and written. Oral communication is the kind of communication when we listen to understand and speak in response. Means here we first listen to someone to understand, to get what he or she is saying, and then we respond in speech to what he has said, what the speaker has said. Written communication now. This is kind of communication when we read to get some information, some feeling or emotion, to understand it, and then we respond it in writing. That is written communication. Okay. Next and the last is the non-verbal communication. It is the kind of communication when we observe a person's body language to infer the meaning and we respond accordingly. But this kind of communication is not in our course. Our course involves the communication that is verbal communication. Language is used there. In verbal communication, both have the kinds of the verbal communication, oral or written. So certainly you might be getting about what you had been doing to this point. Okay, normally we mix the types of communication in practice. It does not mean that these are the types of communication, so at a time we use only one kind of communication. This normally doesn't happen in practical life. What do we do? That sometimes there is some oral communication from the speaker and we respond it in written way, or we can respond it only by body language, or if there is any body language response from the first person, and then we can respond it in oral way. This is what the practice, what is in our practical life. Our course is concerned with oral and written communication only. Let us concentrate on it now. What is now oral, I mean verbal communication? The constituent part of the verbal communication, what are the activities that we do in verbal communication? You see, in the oral one, we listen and we speak. So these are the two constituent part of the oral communication, means listening and speaking. In written communication, form of communication, under verbal communication, what do? We read and then write. So how many activities? 4. Listening, speaking, reading and writing. These 4 basic activities of verbal communication are said to be the 4 fundamental skills of language. Okay? These are the 4 fundamental skills of the language. And now you must remember that you have been doing, strengthening, learning these skills since the very beginning of learning the language. Learning, speaking, competency, section in ASL, and then reading and writing section in your question paper. It is for this reason that is there. But now the matter is how long? How long have we focused on these skills? How much have we learnt them? To the label we have focused and learned these skills, to that label we have learned the language. Have you been confident in learning the language, in learning these skills? Or you were only concerned with question, answer and examination only? You prepared the answers, you wrote the answers, passed the examination, and that was done. No. If you have done that, it means you have confined yourself only to the examination. You have not extended your attitude towards the scope of learning the language. Unless you get the expertise in these fundamental basic skills, you don't know the language. Can you listen and understand the English speaker? Can you speak in English confidently? Can you read and understand? Can you write what you think and what you info? How long can you do? You just observe. You look into yourself, introspect, see. I'm not going to ask. You just look into it. Now you think of the classroom activities that the teachers organized and that you participated in. Were those activities oriented to emphasize and learn and drill these skills, or they were only by themselves? They did not contribute to listening, speaking, reading and writing. If so, it means you were not learning the language through those activities. They went to waste. Certainly. Now you should open your eyes. If you have not focused on these skills, but you are focusing on the lesson, the story, the question and answer, the test, the marks and examination, getting marks and copying the textbook of somebody, notebook of somebody, showing it to the teacher, giving the impression to the teacher that you have done the work, but you exercised only copying, but you did not involve your skills in learning the language. You have to now stop that. Only then you will start learning the language. Let me tell you, let me assure you, if you focus properly, every activity from learning single word, sentence, and then listening, speaking of the sentences, reading the sentences and writing the sentences, means all that must be oriented towards the communication, that must be oriented to develop these skills that make communication, that are the constituent part of communication. If you don't do that, you do not learn language. So today onwards, let us make a decision that we have not to distract from this track. We have always to concentrate on the development of skills, not on the only subject matter of the lesson or only on grammar. You learned grammar too, but you don't know how to frame sentences. You cannot make sentences and use sentences for communication. Now, what is the use of learning grammar? Be pragmatic in learning. Whatever you learn, whatever you do in English class, that must contribute in developing your skills. Only then it is useful, otherwise not. Be careful. Thank you.